Kate Nash on using OnlyFans to fund her tour and call out the live music industry. And then I desperately wanted to read more about this because this is fascinating to me for a lot of reasons. But then I had to subscribe to read the full story, so I didn't, and I went and found an interview on a differently funded website where I could read more about it. So I found on NME where she went into a little bit more detail about this. Now, just going into this, I want to say there's no judgment here at all for her or anyone else doing OnlyFans. I just want to make sure that's stated outright and upfront. And then my fascination or interest in this has nothing to do with any sort of judgment. I do think that starting an OnlyFans to fund touring exposes the giant problem that artists face right now with being able to afford a career as an artist and what that means going forward. Now, this is Kate Nash that has 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify, and she said in one of these that OnlyFans is actually paying her more than Spotify. And that resonated with me because Patreon pays me about double what Spotify pays. This here on Twitch pays almost exactly what Spotify pays me. And then on YouTube, it's increasingly about the same number of what Spotify pays me. And that's been the main, like music has been the main thing that I've put my creative energy into over the past 15 years. But it's like third or fourth in terms of revenue based on creativity that I do. Now, there's a caveat there that I only control, I think, 4 of my albums out of like the 9 that I have out. Another one is Fake 4, so they get the royalties for that. But I think that might turn around soon. And then the other 4 outside of that are Mellow Music Group. I'm getting a couple of those back. And of course, those albums have turned a profit now, so I get some of that back. I get some of that revenue twice a year from Mellow Music Group when they do the royalty reports. In terms of monthly money coming straight to me from Spotify, it's based on 4 albums, I think. And it's not that much. And it's not fuck Mellow Music Group, because I signed and they helped me a lot. They helped me establish my career a lot. And part of what makes sense for them, investing the money in manufacturing and marketing and promotion and PR and all of that, is that they get to keep those projects for a long time. And I get the notoriety that I get to take elsewhere. Like, I wouldn't have been able to start Auto Reverse Records and put my own stuff out. So what happens when I try to relax is an EP, Component System with the Auto Reverse, Another Triumph of Ghetto Engineering, Anime Trauma and Divorce. So those are projects. And then Dark Comedy I have now after last year. So there was a 10-year period on Dark Comedy. So I have that one back now, which is why I put the 10th anniversary Dark Comedy vinyl out, because I now control it. And it's to monetize some of the value of it, and also to sort of stimulate people listening to it again, especially since that's, again, is royalty money that's coming to me monthly now. Brick Body Kids is Mellow Music Group. Hella Personal Film Festival is Mellow Music Group. Special Episode is Mellow Music Group. Kavanaugh is Mellow Music Group. But I said I'm going to get a couple of those back. All of this is why this story resonates with me, because of how hard it is being an artist now. Like, this has been the most difficult year of my creative life financially by far. By miles and miles. This has been the hardest year. And I'm seeing all over the place that musicians are having to turn to different methods in order to keep their career going. And it's just a really unfortunate place of where music is valued in terms of the consumption of it, for one. And with inflation really affecting everybody, like, fans of music don't necessarily have the money to spend on music that they used to have. All of the materials that it takes to create a vinyl album, from the vinyl to the paper and the cardboard and the plastic and everything, all of that costs more now. And the shipping costs more now for everything. So everything that I need to produce to make money is more expensive, and people on average have less money to spend. And I think all of that has equaled a year that's really like torn a lot of artists' lives apart. Um, so these sorts of pivots are hella interesting to me. And so I wanted to get into this full on interview that she has with NME, talking about how she's pivoted to OnlyFans to fund her music career. And let's see what wisdom and insight we can get out of what an artist who, like I said, has 1 million monthly listeners. So this is somebody who's very established, and you would think had enough of an audience, they wouldn't be in a position to have to turn to alternative means to fund their own career. So Kate Nash on OnlyFans, the Lottery Winners. The Lottery Winners is a band, and saving the music industry. Major labels are scared, and they should be. Nash spoke to NME about her Butts for Tour Buses campaign, saving the grassroots, and what the industry and government can do now that music has become an impossible environment for working class people. Recently made headlines when she launched her Butts for Tour Buses campaign, which saw her join OnlyFans to protest the music industry and help raise money for her UK and European tour. The singer and songwriter and Glow actor then took her, in quotes, bum on the back of a fire truck protest to the London offices of Live Nation and Spotify. So there was an outward protest with this as well. The industry is in crisis. The music industry has failed artists and is completely unsustainable. And my arse is shining a light on that. It's exploding now because of my bum. No, I'm joking, Nash told NME. The reason it's tipping over is because we're almost at collapse. The reality is that touring is making losses, not profit. Now, this is my thoughts here, but a lot of the reason that people are saying that touring is making losses now is because of the fees that Live Nations and Ticketmasters and Golden Voices are all taking. The grassroots is an absolute crisis. Venues are closing. Festivals are being canceled. People are thinking, what's the point in starting a band? How can I as an artist carry on? These are all questions that I find myself asking. I feel like it's really mostly unfortunate for independent artists that haven't really gotten started yet, because when those people come to me asking for advice or insight on what I think they should do, I honestly, at this point, don't know what to tell them. If they haven't already established a fan base, it seems almost foolish to try to start from zero now in order to build up enough of a fan base to actually have a career, because none of the pathways that previously seemed viable are still viable. Like, I started doing DIY touring. I can't imagine how people do that now. I can't imagine how people do DIY touring now. I don't know how you book yourself on a tour. If you book yourself on a tour, if you successfully do that, then you're having to pay for physicals to sell to really make any money. That used to be a lot easier in the compact disc times, because you would pay $1,000, get 1,000 CDs, and sell each of those CDs for $10. So you had a $9,000 profit, and manageable boxes that made a lot of sense for a tour van, especially like if you're renting a minivan at Hertz. It's not easy to put 1,000 vinyl records into it along with your equipment and your luggage or anything else that you might have to bring. And it costs a lot more to make 1,000 vinyls. And it's a lot more financially risky for the artist. When I first got into this, the CD economy was perfect. It really sort of buttressed the reality, honestly, because if you were an independent artist and you sold 5,000 CDs in a year, right? It's 50,000 gross or whatever. Not only was that good for you as an artist, that sort of scaling kept a lot of small record labels in business too, because if they had 6 or 7 artists selling 5,000 CDs, like, that's enough to keep the lights on in a place. That's enough to keep a business going. Now, when things switched over first from rampant illegal downloading, which I was a part of, and I have to admit now that I helped kill my own business. when it started from the free downloading and went into the streaming, suddenly the revenue just didn't add up at all. Let's see, what is the streaming equivalent of 5,000 albums on Spotify? 6,250,000 audio streams in a year is what you would have to get from streaming to make the equivalent money of 5,000 CDs sold. And that's just not realistic for most of us. Let me get back into this here. Because of the massive inflation that everyone is experiencing outside of music, so many artists are asking themselves, is this just a hobby or a passion project? Am I going to cross the threshold, or is it time for something to get done on a governmental level? Now, I mean, that's a big ass question, right? Like, should the government be involved in this? In Canada, a lot of the arts are funded by government grants. It's a lot easier to be an independent artist in Canada. You do your paperwork right, you show your proof of citizenship and your proof of real work getting done, and they give you money. They give you money because that is a society that finds more of a value in art, where we don't have any. We're the rugged individualists. We're the sink or swim unless you're some sort of financial institution that's too big to fail and you can be bailed out 6 or 7 ways. If you're an independent artist in the States, if you're small, you're really on your own. So this is the full interview with Kate Nash, where she lays out why OnlyFans is better for artists than Spotify, why change is essential and needs to happen now, and how the government can save the future of music, and her advice for budding young artists. Hello, Kate. What immediate change are you hoping to bring about through your campaign? We need the government's help, and we need it now. Lisa Nandy, the Secretary of State for Culture, Media, and Sport. Do we have something like that? Do we have any sort of Secretary of State for Culture and Media in the States? But I guess, again, this is the difference in our societal values, right? Like we just talked about one of the differences in societal values when it comes to music in the States versus Canada, but I guess in the UK even, right? They have a Secretary of State for Culture, Media, and Sport. Like if we had that as a governmental cabinet position here, I would go for that. I want to be that. That's the job I want. Do you think it's really possible for all the obstacles to be kicked away so artists can be fairly paid through streaming and touring? So this is a great question too, right? Because this is, at the end of the day, all this is capitalism doing capitalism, right? Which seeks to exploit the labor, in this case, of artists. So is it even possible to move some of the obstacles away so that some of these workers can get paid more for their value? She says, I think it will happen. I think major labels are scared, and they should be. There's a lot of investigation that needs to be done. Things that you can't imagine ever changing do change. It has to happen. There seems to be this British arrogance that good music will always just find a way. But how can that happen? They don't have anywhere to start and to grow. See, that's part of what I'm saying too. Like, I really want there to be a world where new independent rap musicians specifically, where they feel like there's a viable path to a career, because right now that's really difficult to see. I feel like we have less new artists being set up to have viable careers than ever, specifically in indie rap. And so this is sort of what I was saying earlier about wanting to be able to advise newer artists on a viable way forward. Exactly. And if they don't earn any money, it's creating an impossible environment for working class people to be able to do this. I think about people going into their 30s and thinking about starting a family. How can they? It becomes an issue of gender, race, misogyny. It's a very political issue. To exclude people and say music is only for the rich and privileged is just really damaging and dangerous. Musicians are so loved by the world and considered so important to our lives. We need to start valuing them. Would you welcome the industry at large coming under new management with more artist-focused drive? I'm not really sure about the major label world, she says. I feel like they all need to be fired and we need to restart. There are a lot of things that haven't been changed. There have been no amendments to contracts that don't make sense anymore in the era of the internet. We need the government and Lisa Nandy to be the hero in this situation because the industry isn't going to fix itself. There are so many people that don't care about music but just see it as a business. Loads of people get brainwashed into thinking this is just how it is. It isn't. I personally don't think you should be able to work at a label until you've toured the US in a van on a budget, staying in Super 8s, and then you can talk to me about what you know about a musician's life. That's hard. That's hard as fuck. That's hard as fuck. I mean, it sort of gets at things I've said on other morning shows about wanting people to have credibility when they speak about hip hop, when they speak about cultures, when they try to break down this and that. It's like, what do you really know about the culture you're speaking about? And I think this is such an interesting idea too, that it would make a lot more sense to have people in position who have the power over artists' lives to actually know what it has been like to experience that. Music fans are willing to spend hundreds on tickets to arenas and stadium shows, but do you think that we need to show people how far their money really goes at grassroots gigs? Yes, also we need to show people that it's a work issue and how many people it takes to put on a show. There's someone at the door, there's a van driver, a bus driver, a backline tech, a monitor engineer, a lighting engineer, a sound engineer, a tour manager. There are so many people it takes to make a show happen. Also, all of those people she lists is why touring costs so much too, and why it's just getting increasingly difficult, especially for bigger acts. Okay, so I'm gonna speak for myself here. Not a big act, right? I'll say this: the last time I went to Europe, I lost money on tour, and it's the first time I've lost money on tour since I was booking myself early on. But I don't know when I can go out there again, because there are things about European touring that just essentially foundationally cost more. Like, I'm going to need a tour manager in Europe. I don't necessarily need a tour man. I can tour manage myself in the States. I can't necessarily tour manage myself in Europe. I'm typically going to need a driver. So if I'm getting the tour manager, which I very likely need in Europe, then that person, it would be great if they can also be a driver, right? Like, I don't want to be driving a van on the wrong side of the street in the UK and all of this stuff that, like, me as an artist, there's a lot of responsibility I can take on. In the States, there's a lot of responsibility I do take on because it saves me money. But it also drives me crazy, right? Like, when I'm tour managing in the States and I'm in a van, right, it means I am waking up, driving 5 to 7 hours, maybe more, depending on what part of the country we're in. If Dave's with me or Rift is with me, then we're taking turns driving. But I've done a lot of this touring by myself. So you're waking up, driving all day long, and like, being in that position in a minivan for 6 hours, 7 hours every day fucks with you. And then there's all the potential risks of weather. There could be an accident on the road. God forbid you're in the accident, but even if there's one that you're not in, it could cause crazy delays. You can end up being late for shows. Rental equipment, it malfunctions all the time. In one of the feature verses, on the one on K the Eyes album, I said me and Dave almost died outside Telluride. We had rented a van and we were driving through the Rocky Mountains in January. This was 2023. And there was a snowstorm and we didn't realize, so we were already driving through the mountains, that we were trying to do the windshield wiper fluid, because the windshield was frosting up and nothing was happening while we're on the road. We're trying to do it and nothing's happening. It turns out the windshield wiper fluid, that entire mechanism, had been frozen. So, like, we're driving. Dave is like we've like bought some fluid and it's in a bottle, and Dave is like reaching out outside of the van to pour it down the windshield while we're driving. Um, there were times when like, the snow started going kind of horizontal. We were in whiteout. Like it was horrible. But those are the sorts of things that happen. Those are the sorts of risks you take. Um, and in the States, I'm comfortable doing all that, taking all of those risks, putting all that on my brain, and still trying to be able to be in a mindset where I can do a show that night, try to be social, try to sell some records, and then get up and do the whole thing over again. In Europe, it's usually a bridge too far for me, just because every city is different, the countries are different. You got to do this and do that, and it's a lot to wrap my head around. So all that said, I need a tour manager over there. I need a driver over there. I couldn't afford to have that, and I didn't realize it until after I came back and was counting my money, basically. The cost for it, and even though like nobody charged me anything crazy, but there were some nights I looked at what I ended up taking home after costs from a gig was sometimes less than what the tour manager got with their daily rate. And like that's the type of shit that's not sustainable. And it's like I'm not going to just magically get an offer for so much more money that it makes sense, because that's not how it works. The offer is based on demand. The offer is based on what the venues think they can get based on people coming to see me in a place. And it just don't always make sense. It was alarming when English teachers Lily Fontaine stood up in Parliament and spoke about how when you boil down everything as artists, if you boil down everything an artist is required to do, even relatively successful ones earn less than minimum wage. I'm surprised it's legal, she says. Like I said, in a lot of other industries, you could, I guess you could call it theft, fraud, and illegal. It's been interesting to use OnlyFans because I'm producing work from it. What I'd usually do for social media is to hire a photographer, bring them on tour, upload. These are all great things to do if you can afford it. The amount of times a label or manager would say, make sure you post to social media. Of course, I fucking know how to post to social media. It's just so dissatisfying. It's this empty algorithmic vacuum where you're spending hours feeding it and getting very little return. Is it even working? Whereas on OnlyFans, I'm paid to go on there and do it. That's quite a satisfying feeling. It is hours of work, and artists don't like doing it or the amount of pressure that comes with it. Back in the day, I just post a picture on my MySpace after playing a gig. Now, everyone in the world is being sucked into this trap of spending their lives online to promote themselves. It's an addiction. That's a deeper conversation. I agree with Lily, and I think that so much of the legalities of it needs to be looked into. There needs to be help for those who can't earn the minimum wage. I know a lot of people who go on tour and don't pay anyone because they can't. Fuck. Do you think fans would pay more if they knew how things really were? There's a disconnect, and it is changing. Most people think that a musician with a hit in the public eye or on tour is loaded and should enjoy the privilege of being able to do it. It's all about if you really value art and music. I do. I think most fans do. Most music fans are amazing and really care about their favorite artists and want to help. We should be asking fans too, because they should have a say in this. What advice would you give to a young artist who wants to pursue music but doesn't think it's financially worth the risk? I would say, look, I'm putting my bum out there and arse on the line for a better future for you, and I won't give up. Interesting wording. The most important thing an artist can do is fight for a better future. The one thing I'd really like to leave behind is to have some kind of positive dent on this industry. I think I can make that dent with my bum. So this is interesting. I am completely in support of her using whatever means necessary to fund her career. I don't know if this is necessarily like a martyrdom thing. I don't know if this is if this turns her into the Martin Luther King of musicians. I guess I think what's missing for me is a little bit of the political statement of it all. It's like, I guess if what she's saying is, look what I have to do because music isn't making enough money, then that sort of makes it into a sort of messaging that could help more people. But it also sounds like she wants to. And again, no judgment here at all. But I guess I'm missing a little bit of the political messaging in order to make this into a crusade that's going to help all musicians. I guess even starting the conversation, though, I should say that even getting enough attention through all of this and using that attention to start this conversation is very helpful. It is indeed very helpful. So on that measure alone, then yes, this is a helpful thing to do to bring light to this issue. Because I think a lot of what happens is when you first come into this, everyone is told literally like fake it till you make it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's sort of the ethos. It's like you don't let people in on how much of a struggle it is. Usually you like to buy things before you can afford them, to wear them or show them, and to convince people that you have a certain lifestyle, because that makes people believe that you're successful, which in turn to some degree does precipitate success. And in the world of social media, in the world of being online, what typically makes all of that go, what makes that world go around, is the faking it, is people spreading the successes, is spreading the wins. A lot of times people on social media, as they're scrolling and trying to escape from their own day, they don't necessarily want to see an artist posting about hard times. And I get all of that, but I think where that's landed us is a place where the reality online for a lot of artists is very different from the reality that we actually face every day when it comes to surviving, living, all of that. Like, I don't necessarily want to be talking about how hard of a year this has been for me, but I sort of have to, because if I don't, then I feel even weirder about continuing to post Dark Comedy 10th anniversary vinyl because I need people to buy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, when I started selling those, I didn't think I was going to be in a position where I had to keep pushing them for 6 months. But since that is the actual reality for me, I've had to find whatever avenues within my mind to open the door for me to continue to do that, because that doesn't align with how we typically have to present ourselves. So I've sort of had to be a little bit more honest about what's been going on with me, and in that I am grateful for a conversation starter like this. One thing that's going to help matters is if we can be a little bit more open about what's actually happening. So for that, I am definitely grateful for this sort of conversation starter. I won't be starting no OnlyFans no time soon, but I'm seeing Patreon try to become OnlyFans, not in terms of selling sexual content necessarily. When I post the videos on demand of the morning show, Patreon has started asking me, hey, do you want to sell this? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where their business model is going, because they're in competition with OnlyFans. And to that degree, thinking about Patreon as a means of selling content, right, is not an avenue to be ignored either, you know. But that's enough yapping about all of that. And hey, let's hear what y'all have to say. Like and subscribe, homie, friend. It's free. Stop playing.